Yes, hello and welcome to the Course Language Podcast. Very special guest today, Dr. Tina Maio. Second time on the podcast, Tina. Very excited to have you here, given that it is officially Adam Scott's 100th major in a row. Now, you have had an extensive history with many of the elite players from Australia and around the world as an osteopath, and we're just going to pick your brain a little bit today in terms of what things we need to be doing as golfers to keep our body moving and to create a little bit of longevity in this game injury-free. So thank you very much for joining us, Tina, and welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me again.
Now, let's jump straight into Adam Scott, obviously. He is the man of the moment. In your experience, to play 100 majors in a row, over 20 years of professional golf, what's the likelihood that someone is able to compete at that level without any injuries during that time? We know how many injuries Tiger Woods has had over that period. Just explain to us how difficult it is to keep your body in that kind of shape.
Yeah, I mean, 100 consecutive majors is extraordinary, I think, for anybody. But I think, it demands so much, golf demands so much, just not just physically, but mentally as well. So if we think about, it's not as easy as just, a single trait or just preventing injuries. It's not that simple, really. I think there's much more at play, like their endurance physically, how efficient their nervous system is, how emotionally stable they are is also, I think, a really big factor for someone to play that long and that well. Their technical consistency, obviously, they need to be technically good, and yeah, to have a career-long performance like someone like Adam has had. And the other thing I think is you have to keep qualifying. You don't get to play majors consistently. And so, it is obviously staying healthy, but it's remaining good enough at golf for that long. So when we think about world rankings, we think about, other past majors and their performances, how many wins they've had, and, can they do that consistently to qualify? That's the first part that
Absolutely.
I think is phenomenal.
I mean, you're talking about someone who has one of the technically most beautiful looking swings of all time as well. And that comes down to his body in great detail as well, doesn't it? With the TPI system, he's, I believe, the only person who scores in the good range for every possible movement. Is that correct?
Yeah, so biomechanics, I think, yeah, for sure. But I think with a lot of those models, you've got to think that our genetics have a big part to play because they're based on arm lengths and leg lengths and trunk length. And, so those things are going to dictate how you're going to move anyway. So I think sometimes what we're born with, we have to take that into account. So fortunately for Adam, he's quite tall. He has long levers. He's got a good, strong physique. So that obviously works in his favor and allows him to have biomechanics that I suppose follow what models like the TPI or the Grays Institute or those sort of models that consider the ideal golf swing. But I think ultimately there's lots of players who don't have the same levers as Adam and still are biomechanically quite good and still quite efficient out on tour, much shorter players. And still it comes down to efficiency at the end of the day. But yeah, he has got an advantage being quite tall and long arms and long legs.
Absolutely. He's a physical beast. I mean, so you mentioned earlier on, I want to get into this topic of how important we now know the neurological stuff is in terms of the body. Adam's continued to put on length, which has been incredible into the later part of his career. I think he's swinging the club faster than he's ever swung it. Seems like he's hitting the ball longer than he's ever done it. Does that have anything to do with just muscle training or lead us into what that neuro or neurological pathways are?
Yeah, so it's a great question because we are understanding more about the impact of the brain on performance. And, the brain's the control center for the body. It controls everything we do. So the way we move, the way we breathe, everything. So we have different systems that do different things. But if we talk about a nervous system efficiency and neuroplastic changes in our brain, which basically means your brain's ability to adapt, reorganize, and rewire its neural connections. So in response to, different experiences we have, different things we're learning, and particularly when it comes to a golf swing where we're trying to consistently reproduce the same movement pattern over and over. These connections are so important, and the more we strengthen these connections, the more consistent we are. So someone who's played for decades with a solid swing has got good neuroplastic changes in their brain. So that's what we would say about someone like Adam or anyone who's playing at the elite level. Their ability to for the brain to remember those patterns and those connections are really ingrained really well. So when movement's more efficient, if we talk about that, that means that less muscle tension is created in the body. So the more efficient you move, the more effortless your swing feels and the more effortless it appears. So lots of people comment on swings like Adam and say, gee, he looks so effortless when he swings. And he describes it as feeling effortless and he's not even trying, which is a great description for someone who hasn't got a lot of pressure on their nervous system. So things are very regulated. The system is not under pressure. The brain is very comfortable. So when we get uncomfortable, that's when things get pear-shaped with the putting too much stress on our body. So but it also means less energy is wasted. That's the other thing. So you're conserving, when you've got to play, golf takes a long time. So you need to conserve as much energy as you can and to play back-to-back days and then back-to-back weeks. So, you've got less stress on your joints, your recovery's better. All those things come down to how efficient your nervous system works. So the fact that we're understanding recovery better, we're understanding all these things better, and we're essentially saying, let's take more heat off your nervous system. Let's make your system more efficient. And therefore, all those things get better. So sequencing is better then, timing is better, your ability to generate ground force is better, your kinetic chains are better, because the brain is responsible for all those things. And we're talking about like an automated movement to not be so conscious of your swing, I guess, needs to happen to play efficiently. You need to play and not have too much conscious thought going into that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Fascinating. So if I was to come down and we wanted to work on this, or some small aspects of this, obviously everyone's a little bit different, but just for an example, what are some of the methods that we use now, or what are some of the practices that we can put into play everyday players?
Yeah, so I think obviously working on regulation of the different parts of your brain. So we would teach you, we're using eyes a lot, testing your eyes, and basically your visual system connects to the motor system of our brain, which is basically the part of our brain which tells us how to move. So what you're seeing and will determine your balance, what you're feeling through your feet. So eyes are very important. So we will test, we do neurological testing now, basically. So as well as physical testing, so not just mobility, not just strength, we're also adding neural testing now very much with any players who obviously need to improve in this space or need to improve their efficiency. So if you've had an injury at any point, those neuroplastic changes that I was talking about earlier that are important for connections, they also change if you've had an injury. So if you've had a prior back injury, your brain remembers that injury. So if you feel the slightest, if you're making a turn and you feel the slightest niggle and you go, oh no, is that my back? And you get a bit like, people get fearful, and you've probably seen it as a coach in people that you're coaching.
Yeah.
Where the brain remembers that sensation. So there's a bit of panic and a bit of fear. And we have a threat center in our brain where we remember, even bad stuff, so emotionally, all of a sudden your anxiety goes up, stress is up, all that's up. And then that changes the way your swing's going to happen because your brain's already in cautious mode. So you're going to modify, you're going to find a way to move around that, right? So neuroplastic changes can be good or they can be bad. But we can train you out of those. We need to work out what networks in your brain have been affected. And we need to then go, we're going to target those. And some of that is through exercise. Some of that is through, we can do it with brain stimulation. We can use it with eye lights that send information through to your brain via your eyes. So our sensory system, sensory information goes through our eyes and talks to our middle brain. So that information coming in helps regulate networks that are previously been dysregulated by pain or by, something traumatic that may have happened for people.
Fascinating. And when we really do see this stuff regularly, just even when we're coaching, things that you're mentioning in terms of tension, or if someone's had a knee injury or something like that, you can really see that they're, particularly the left knee for a right-hander, they're quite cautious moving into that side of things. So just as a little shout out as well, we'll put this in the show notes as well, but anyone can go and see you, can book in with you, Dr. Tina Maio, down at Coburg Osteopathy, or one of the many practitioners you've got working down there. I couldn't recommend you guys high enough. If this sounds like anything that you have dealt with in the past or currently dealing with that feels like it might be holding your game back, please book in and get going with all this, because the sooner you get this this right, the longer you'll be able to play, right?
That's right. And if the better the nervous system regulates, right? So the really good players have really good regulation. So they can control things like anxiety, frustration, recovering from poor shots that, players who are learning to play the game and get really frustrated and throwing clubs and things like that, I think they're not regulating well. Their nervous
No.
system isn't regulating. So get that. That's why you feel that. But if you can get that under control and be emotionally a little bit more stable, it's going to help your game so much. So sometimes the physical injuries that they've had lead to that frustration as well, because it's like, I've had this pain for so long and it stops me playing and all those things. So we're finding more and more the connection between the mental, I guess, the brain and the body, so much more, really understanding it, I guess, and being able to explain to people that connection and the sorts of things they can do, and that it's the pain they're feeling is real. They're not imagining that this is the case, and that it explains why they're frustrated and why they're not getting to where they'd hope to be with their golf swing.
Yeah.
It's a tough game, but if you've got all the systems working, it's much easier.
Well, all the systems will be being tested this week at the US Open at Shinnecock. It doesn't get any tougher a test than this, particularly if the wind blows. I mean, this is a brutal test. It's a big walk. There are some huge hills.
Yeah.
Talk us through a little bit of what doesn't need to be specific to Scotty, but how would generally players after long days on the golf course, hilly conditions, you're talking about mentally as well, you're dealing with just barrages of difficult up and downs, difficult second shots, stressful tee shots. All of this is, as you're saying, takes a toll on the human body.
Yes.
How would someone go about best case recovery processes after each round at the US Open?
Yeah. So when there's big weeks like majors, I think the chronic stress is like it's accumulative, right? So if you're not managing that well, it'll build and build, and then, people will just, things will blow up. But I think the recovery effectively afterwards, so obviously physically, there's, different things like, you can obviously nutritionally, making sure they're eating and drinking and rehydrating, which is a big one. Mentally, I always talk about, we talk about meditation a lot and breathing and using that because breathing really regulates our nervous system, which is why, when people get stressed and people they say breathe in and breathe out and try and use your breath. So breathing in for say 4 seconds and then breathing out for 6 seconds. So if your out breath is longer than your in breath, it really helps regulate the brain talking to the rest of your body. So that's a really simple way for people to go, okay, I need to restore normal regulation through my brain. So if they've got devices to help with brain stimulation, they can use those to help reset nervous system. Otherwise, doing, hot and cold showers, that helps regulate things back in. And that all those things that we talk about, that's what we're essentially doing. We're restoring back to neutral, if you like, or back to where we started, so that the next day they feel fresh and they can go again. So physically and mentally for sure, but breath is a big one. We hold our breath a lot and our breath changes when we're very stressed.
And again, this is stuff that we can all do. So do you recommend guided meditation, or is there anything that you prefer over certain meditations than others?
Yeah, I think not everyone responds to the same tools. So I think having different types of things you can try is really important. So so some people guided meditation works. Some people, are quite good at, I think most golfers playing in a major, they're very disciplined people, so they're very routine people. So the warm up never changes, the cool down never changes, things are very set and, forget. But we've got to get that fight flight system going very quiet so they can feel like they're energized. But I think you need to just find what works. Some people, yoga works really well, listening to music works really well. So you just got to find things that help bring your, calm your nervous system down again. Yeah.
Such great stuff. Again, you can go and see Tina at Coburg Osteopathy or any of the clinicians she's got working with her. Just finishing, obviously, this is surrounding Adam Scott. You've worked at high levels, elite levels with many of the Australian pros that we all know and remember in the VIS programs, in Australian programs. Give us something that Adam Scott himself is about to play his 100th major, as we've spoken about. Give us a little, just something that he's said, or a way that he goes about doing things, or something that just clicked in your mind that was the recognition that this guy's just a little bit different. Can you give us anything there?
I think his ability to really keep things quite simple. So as complex as golf is, I think there's just, the simplicity of, he's very in tune with his body, obviously, and his awareness is next level. So being able to, he'd be able to tell you if he was standing there and there was more weight at the base of his big toe on the left foot.
Wow.
Like, so I'm saying, the more work you do on your body, the more your awareness improves. So the
Mm,
more you can feel exactly what's going on. So if you're standing on a putting green and you're trying to work out which way things are leaning or where the pressure is more in your feet. I think having that really heightened awareness, but like being able to process that in a very simple way, so not overcomplicating things,
mm.
is probably, I think, something he does extremely well. Yeah.
Excellent. And that
Yeah.
obviously comes from years and years of following his programs, doing his stretching, being incredibly diligent with his body, that
Yeah.
practice starts to come out. It's a little bit like, I guess if I relate it to what I do in terms of somebody understanding where a closed face is or where an open
Yep.
face is, the
Yep.
more of that range that you've felt over a long period of time of practice, the better your awareness of where the club face will be throughout your swing. And you're saying it's exactly the same with your body.
Yeah, and if you've always been in that range of things being fairly consistent, as soon as something's out of that range, you know about it straight away because you've
Mm,
been consistent 98% of the time. So things don't get to go pear-shaped they don't go too far too often. So I think that's the key. The more consistent you become as a player, then the more that just keeps feeding itself.
oh,
That
completely
yeah.
highlights why he's played 100 majors in a row. Then he's probably going to feel if something's a little tighter or something needs work before
Yeah.
it becomes a problem, right?
Exactly, and before it becomes an injury. So that's the
Mm,
key thing with anyone. If we talk about injury prevention, and the only way you're going to be able to stand, turn up to a major 100 times in a row, is if you haven't had a major injury
mm,
or a life circumstance that's caused you to miss,
yeah,
an event. Some players have obviously had, as well as rankings dropping and things like that. But that's what's ruined the streak for other people.
yeah,
If you look at that and you compare, like you
absolutely.
said, Tiger's had lots of issues, like lots of other players have pulled out with back pain. But it's not just elite skill, we're talking about,
Mm,
as I said, an exceptional nervous system, really good biomechanics, really good, robust body so you don't get injured, being really be able to regulate your emotions. Like
mm,
that's a big factor for me. I'm really big about the emotions, Ryan, but consistent motivation as well, consistently turning up to the gym all the time and being really diligent with your preparation, and just long-term managing your health, right? So that's everything. Get
absolutely.
your blood tests done, do all the right things, just make sure you're across anything before it becomes a real problem for people.
Absolutely. And it obviously highlights that he's not playing the game for money, right? Like he's got all the money in the world. He wants to win more of these majors. And that being said, Tina, what do you reckon? What are his chances like this week? How's he going to go at Shinnecock in his 100th major?
Well, good. I think he's had a couple of weeks off and he's been preparing well. So I think he'll be good. So yeah, I'm really excited to watch him play, and I'm going to get to catch up with him straight after it. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Brilliant. Well, we look forward to
Yeah.
catching up with you and hearing about that. He keeps joking about it being a one. He's won one major. It's 1% of 100, obviously. So let's hope he can get number
That's
two
right.
this week. It'd be an
Perfect.
incredible story. And thank you very much for your time, Dr. Tina Mayo. Again, go and see her. Coburg Osteopathy. Incredible practitioners down there as well. So thank you so much for your time, Tina, and your insights.
No worries. Good to see you.
You too. Thanks.